Joining us now is Neal, the Chief Executive of Lloyds of London. John, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us. My first question is just on the broader economic environment that you're seeing, and of course insurance so heavily linked to interest rates as well, with the first rate cut in the books. Are you optimistic about the outlook for the UK economy?
Well, hello, and thank you for having me on. I think, as you said, in the context of where we're at the moment, we're doing two things at once. We are growing, importantly, we are profitable. And I think to go where your question's going, I think we're therefore able to deliver for investors and customers. On the latter point, it's so patently a riskier world, and that's where insurance has an opportunity to step up, whether it's the financial measures you're talking about of interest rates or inflation, or whether it's war at one end of the spectrum, or climate change, or even some of the systemic exposures we see with CrowdStrike recently. So we think we've got a definitive role to play in making it easier for businesses or governments to take smart financial decisions by offering either their P&L or their balance sheet the protection that they think they need.
Let's talk about some of those specific risks you mentioned. Has the rising occurrence of cyber attacks, obviously the CrowdStrike outage is a slightly different issue, but linked to it, made it harder for you to insure, let's say, businesses or indeed individuals because of those risks that are out there?
No, we don't think so. We've been writing cyber insurance now for well over 20 years. So we've dealt with over 40,000 cyber claims. So we really do understand the complexity of the issues that are at hand. I think we've got to do a much better job as insurers explaining the value proposition of what we do and how we can help people be protected against just that very type of risk. So we do feel comfortable in understanding the risk and therefore able to provide a sensible amount of cover.
On housing insurance, and this has been a major factor in the United States, where the sort of common the occurrence of natural disasters has risen, and so has the severity. It's a bit of an issue here with flooding in particular. But is it harder to insure homes because of the changing environmental landscape?
So I think it has been, and you've seen, for example, in the US. The spend on insurance by US individuals is roughly twice what it is in the UK. So there is a much higher spend on insurance. And there were areas where it became difficult. I think we're at a point, even if you look at the UK and you look at flood insurance and the implications there, I think the banks, the insurers, regulators and government need to sit in the same room and work out what the best solution is. We're all part of the solution. It's not all down to insurers. What assets do banks think they have? How do they want them protected? How can insurers help? And how can we ensure that government sits right at the end of the chain as an insurer of last resort, not too early in the picture? So you're seeing some of that happen in the US. It needs to play out here, and it needs to play out similarly and differently in different parts of the world.
Wanted to touch on the outlook for corporate tax in particular, but tax in general. We're all awaiting the budget, of course, on the 30th of October. There's certain taxes that have been ruled out as not being addressed. It leaves a fewer number. Corporate tax is one of them. Do you think further hikes in the corporate tax rate would be sensible?
I think it's important, and credit where credit's due. I think Labour incoming spent a lot of time with business to understand what it could and should do to ensure the economy was sustained, employment could increase. Our base is, let's get tax in the right place corporately, that it encourages businesses to want to operate from here. Let's get the regulatory environment sensible so that we're well protected. But again, we're quick in terms of decisions we need to make to encourage businesses to want to invest and commit here. So I think it's getting the balance right. Yes, there are clearly financial difficulties for any government, but let's get the balance right that we can allow businesses to grow. If businesses grow, then it increases employment, increases consumption, which that is net good news.
I read this morning that you said we've got to be careful on tax. I worry about businesses wanting to be formally established here in the UK.
Yeah.
Are we at a tipping point there? Is there a little bit of room to increase corporate taxes? It's already going up from 19% to 25%.
In my view, I think that's, of course, you should pay tax. You've got to pay tax. I think at that level, it feels sensible. I think what we want to do, particularly as I wear a sort of financial services hat, the UK has a real role to play in financial services globally. So we've got to find the way to want businesses to continue to be here. The US has very much used London as a gateway into Europe and into the rest of the world. We want to maintain that. So I think getting the tax environment right, and I mean right both ways around, and getting the regulatory environment right is critical if that's going to happen and continue to happen.
You mentioned the outreach Labour did perhaps more before the election than since. But
Sure.
as you sit here now, do you think Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, gets that message? Are you confident that she's going to get this tricky balance right in the weeks ahead on October the 30th?
So the sense that we would get in business is yes. I mean, you get the sense that Labour is genuinely thinking definitively about medium and long term and not just short term implications. So yes, of course it's a Labour government. Yes, of course it's got Labour considerations, and so it should have. But I think it is also thinking about the economic well-being of industry and therefore the country as a whole. So far encouraged. I think the thinking is smart. I think the confidence and the decisiveness is good. So a bit like you, I'm waiting with bated breath, but I don't look at, when you think of geopolitical complications in the world, we don't look as the UK as being a complicated place to operate. If anything, it's one of the cleanest places to operate at the moment.
John Neal, CEO of Lloyds of London, thanks so much for joining us. Great to see you.
Thank you.